Welcome back to another episode of Run Till You're Done. Tonight, Nick has done us proud and went out and got a superb guest. Multiple spine finisher, multiple FKT on the spine, multiple Barkley finisher, the T Dodger himself. We've got John Kelly. Welcome, John Kelly.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on, John. So the first question that we would like to ask is, why do you run?
Well, I ran as a kid, ran in high school, track and cross country, but I kind of took a decade off and wanted to see what I could do in some of the longer distances. And then discovered this crazy thing called trail running. And I also have a background in hiking and backpacking, and loved the idea of being able to combine those and see more in the limited amount of time that I have to get out in these places.
And your hiking's taken you to some big adventures, big races, FKTs. You've done Spine multiple times. You've done Barkley multiple times. If people don't know what that is, go and look it up, because we don't have time tonight to explain what it is. What motivates you to do these sort of type 2 adventures, type 2 fun?
Well, a big part of it is getting out there and just being able to explore. I kind of have a the way I think of it myself, which it takes a minute to think about this usually to understand it, but I like to say that I'd rather see some of all of it than all of some of it. And so, I know that getting out there and running, I'm not able to soak in as a few things as much as possible, but I'm able to see so much more in my limited amount of time. But then also there's the aspect of it that I've just discovered by doing these things, by putting myself in these, effectively artificially challenging situations, that I'm able to learn and grow through that in a way that we don't encounter in everyday life. And that does carry over to more day-to-day things, and especially to whenever I do encounter actual real challenges in life.
And you've just been over recently as well for, as Mike's mentioned, the Spine race. You've done that a couple of times, done the Pennine Way FKT. How did you find it fared for you this year?
It wasn't the completely successful outcome I was hoping for. It was certainly better than spraining my ankle and not finishing like I did last year. Mainly I had some sleep issues. I had a bit of an issue with a diversion that I missed. And so there were a few small things that didn't go my way, but came out of it with a finish and a good experience. And again, something that I can build upon for the future. So certainly glad I was there and glad I was able to get this one done.
Do you know how, like, you're having a bad day, as it were? What sort of, how do you get round that? How do you get back out and you just grind out the finish?
Yeah, and it's difficult in particular because, on one hand, the more you do these things, the more you have this kind of reservoir of experiences in your mind that you can recall and kind of tell yourself, hey, you've been here before, you've been in bad spots, you've came out of it, you've pushed through, things have gotten better, and being able to recall those is incredibly powerful. But on the other hand, the more that you've done some of these things, and if you've had successes in the past, it's very difficult to tell yourself, like, hey, you're going to continue on and the result is going to be worse than one you've already had before. But you're going to carry on anyway. And so it is a bit of refocusing of what your goal is, of what you're out there to get from the experience. And so I do kind of shift my own goalposts a little closer. Maybe adjust my honestly my effort level to compensate for that, to where it's something that I feel, you know, mentally and physically is justified. And also to just, you know, remember that I'm not guaranteed to ever be able to get out there again. You know, something might happen that prevents that, and I need to enjoy that opportunity and that experience while I can.
You said earlier that you don't always see things because you're basically going too fast. A horrible thing to have to be too fast. But you were obviously a bit slower this time coming at the end of the spine. Did you see things differently at the end that you haven't seen in previous years?
Well, the other part of the spine is, you know, you're dealing with 16 hours of darkness every day, so probably a bit more than that by the time you get up to Scotland. So you know, you can't see as much. I've seen certainly much more of the Pennine Way on my summer record attempts. Um, but yeah, it was a very different experience finishing this year, where I kind of, the first time I was in the lead and being chased, and I was all out focused on you know, staying in the lead, maintaining that, and running. And this year, you know, I'd already conceded that, and so it was very much just getting out and enjoying a trip over the Cheviots. And I even kind of told myself in Burness that 26 miles from the finish, with just that trip over the Cheviots, like, I can't believe I'm needing to convince myself on what was a beautiful day to get out there and do that. And so I did, got up there, and it was it was still actually daylight then, and just getting up to the top of that first climb, and I could see the entire Cheviots laid out before me, the course, just every little peak, like I could mentally draw a line over the terrain of the remaining course. And so that was a really great experience. And then just, yeah, being able to take that in and enjoy it a bit more. I actually at the very last little climb before the descent to the finish is the shill. And I had a bottle of Iron Brew that Nikki Spinks had left at Burness, and I picked up and had been drinking the whole time over the Cheviots. And so I popped off the Pennine Way over to the actual summit of the shill, climbed the rock formation, finished my Iron Brew, and just kind of enjoyed that last little moment before heading down. So it did, uh, despite not having the outcome I wanted as far as running, it did allow me to enjoy a few moments much more so than I would have had I still been racing.
Yeah, really important question here. Was it full sugar Iron Brew, or was it the new artificial sweetener?
Yeah, no, it's you got to have the full
Full
legit
experience.
stuff when you're doing these things.
Yeah.
So someone told me afterwards that there is apparently like some original recipe Iron Brew hidden there in that rock formation on the shill. Probably just urban legend, but I didn't see any while I was up there.
I always say, when you said you had a different experience, but I find that leading a race, the paranoia of somebody coming up behind you, catching you, that is the biggest motivator that I've ever had. So I'm guessing you didn't have that motivation this time round.
Right, and that's something that I've kind of joked in the past. I need, when I get to these sleep deprived states where I'm really having trouble staying awake, I just need someone to like pop out from behind a rock, wearing a bib or a bib number, and that would kind of give me that adrenaline shot to keep going. Because it very much, that again, that first year, I thought that I was comfortably in the lead, and then Jason Cavill really kind of snuck up on me, and we crossed paths there in Bellingham at the last checkpoint, and just seeing him there, you know, having that physical meeting really gave me the burst that I needed to push onward from there.
And that's a really nice segue into the next question about the sleep deprivation between your FKTs, Spine, Barkley, your big events you've done. Do you have a set sleep strategy for each event, or is it pretty uniform across everything?
Well, it's, the stuff that's like 60 hours and less, I kind of, Barkley, the Pennine Way records, things like that, I push through until I simply can't, and get a power nap when I really need it, which for me seems to be a bit more often than most other people. And last year's Barkley with 5 finishers, I was the only one that slept. On my Pennine Way record, I attempted to sleep for about 40 minutes in Gargrave. So that's something I tell anyone who's like, oh, how can you take any more time off that record? And I said, well, there's 43 minutes in Gargrave. Just don't stop in a van there, and that's yours. That's there for the taking. And so, I certainly continually trying things and trying to figure out things of how I might avoid that. But it's this area between 60 and 120 hours, like spine and tour de gent, that I just haven't quite figured out what works best for me as far as naps or actual sleeps. And then, you go above that sort of 5 day mark where you're venturing into like my Wainwright's record at the Grand Round, and I'm getting legit, as in like 1 to 3 hours of sleep each night, and that seems to mostly carry me through that length of time.
It's that little gap between 60 hours and 120 that gets you.
Yeah, it's what I'm still trying to figure out.
And what happens when you don't get the sleep? Do you hallucinate? And if so, what are the hallucinations?
No, I've never hallucinated, and so
In my club.
That's something that I know. A lot of Jasmine Paris, I know, has had some very vivid hallucinations, the kind where like that they're hallucinations, but they're still there, and you can't make them go away. So that's something that some people experience. Others just can't think coherently when they get really sleep deprived. My issue is I just flat out can't stay awake. I cannot stay on my feet. I will fall asleep while moving almost. I mean, actually going in just before Hornistead Farm this year, running through that kind of forest logging area, I caught myself, like startled myself with a snore mid-stride as I was running. And so that's my issue, is I just physically cannot stay awake when I get to that point.
But you've got a PhD in electrical engineering, is that right?
Yeah.
And you're a data scientist. Do you think that modern AI has got a place in race planning, coaching? Could it help narrow down what you're doing, analyzing your races? Discuss.
It could be a good assistant. And it could certainly develop in that area as well. I haven't experimented with it much specifically for that purpose. But I think it's what I've found for most uses. I mean, particularly if you're talking about things like ChatGPT and other large language models, it's great for kind of gathering information and research and distilling things for you. But then it's still very much up to you to make a judgment that and make sure that it's all legitimate and makes sense, and to refine it before just taking that raw output and accepting it as truth. I kind of liken it to giving an accountant who had been doing everything with pen and paper, giving them a calculator, but one that occasionally gives you the wrong answer. And so you just have to still have that knowledge to know that, hey, that's not right. I need to check that one and fix it.
Yeah, there are certain things, because you're dealing with humans, you need that human input to judge certain things. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, and to know what question to ask to begin with. That's still a huge part of these problems.
Yeah.
So you do your events that range between 60, 120 hours. Lots of training, I would imagine, behind that. What do you think about when you're out training or events while you're running?
Well, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is I really, I think people assume that training scales linearly with the distance of the race, and that's not true. I really don't train any more than what I'll say a serious amateur marathon runner would do in terms of miles and time per week. It's structured a bit differently. It has different focuses depending on where I am in the cycle and what race I'm going into. And I definitely don't train as much as I did when I was doing triathlon seriously. There's only so much running that your body can take before it hits diminishing returns or it becomes counterproductive. But circle back to your actual question. I really that's my one time of day that I don't specifically have to think about anything, and so sometimes I'm just letting my mind wander or letting it zone out for a bit. Sometimes that's giving me that kind of period of unstructured thought to really process some problems or challenges that I'm dealing with at work or a home repair or something else tricky that I've been trying to solve. And just you can't always come up with the best solution when you're like there at the problem itself, fixated on it, and trying to come up with something right then. It's in those moments where your mind is a bit more free and can process things in the background that oftentimes the best solution pops into your head.
Yeah, I think what you were saying, first part of your answer there was work smarter, not harder. You're probably more focused on doing the right training, not more training. More doesn't necessarily mean better.
Right, and a huge part of that also has been, I've been working with David Roach for I guess 6 years now. He also coaches Damien, and so just having a coach, someone to kind of lay out that training plan for me, and not have to think about it myself, and not have to constantly second guess myself of, oh, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing too much? Just, having it kind of laid out. I do it, I'm done with it, and I can move on and not have to worry about what exactly I'm doing has been a huge time saver and stress relief for me.
I'd like to ask as well, John, about fueling. What do you take gels at all, or do you tend to use real food on the trails? What gets you by?
So that's adjusted a bit for me over the years as kind of my own preferences have adjusted. I've found different things that have worked. I've, gotten older and learned about things like acid reflux and other stuff that a 25-year-old doesn't usually have to think about. And so, about half my calories now come from liquid nutrition, Tailwind, about a quarter of them for gels, which lately I've been using Martin. I feel like that it works well for me and has a nice kind of bland, non-offensive taste. And then another quarter is kind of additional foods, sometimes real food that I need on these long events, supernatural fuel operating that they're in the UK. Has been great, and snack foods and really whatever I just give myself that little margin to eat whatever I'm craving in the moment.
And leading on from that, the races like Barkley, where you're doing a loop, you're coming back in, you're obviously stocking up for the next 20-mile loop. How long do you stop between loops at Barkley, and what do you take with you?
As little as possible, and that's something that really I've kind of spurred a change in the race in the past 10 years, where it used to be people could go back to their campsite, get some proper food, maybe even get a quick shower, head back out. And now the margins are so thin, you've got to have that quick turnaround. And so there's now turnaround at the gate. There's a roped off area, and like between after the first and second loops, I'm there for minutes. I mean, I don't even sit down. It's swap my pack out, maybe get a quick bite and head on back out. And it is just, what I've just mentioned is my food options. When I'm there in camp, it's a great time to try to quickly throw down some things that are maybe less portable, like rice pudding. Not great to put in a pack, but is great fuel for an aid station or a stop, or pasta. Anything along those lines is a good kind of supplement to get when available between loops.
And do you get to keep the pages from your book when you collect them?
Yeah, it's I've got a box, a nice little collection of pages at this point.
You haven't put them up as wallpaper?
My first finish, I made a bit of a collage out of them, which hangs up in my office. But yeah, the rest of them are still in their little baggies. Some of them I've given to various people over the years. But yeah, my 3 finishes at least, I still have those complete sets.
And I just have to ask as well, John, just before we move on. I know she's not our guest, but you mentioned Jasmine Paris earlier, and the world went crazy, or our world went crazy when she finished. I'd just like to know, what was that like to see firsthand, her running into the gate and seeing her finish there in person? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I don't expect that I will ever see another moment like that in sport in person. And it was really a complete mirror experience for me of 2017, when I finished and I asked where Gary Robbins was. And I just, in my mind, I fully expected, like, well, he's either finished or he'll be in any minute now, like he's definitely finishing. And then he showed up just late and coming from the wrong direction, and didn't get the finish. Whereas this time we were there, and like knowing where I saw Jasmine on that last loop, and talking with people who had seen her at the tower, just it seemed pretty certain that she wasn't going to make it. And so we were kind of resolved of like, oh, this is rough, really close, but maybe next time. And then all of a sudden, there she was. And actually, my son, way down on the other end of camp, shouted, there's a runner coming. And so it was this just unbelievable, surprising moment. And just seeing her give her all, and push up that last little torturous hill through camp to get to the gate was amazing. And I think it was just 99 seconds or so on a 60-hour race. It's just unbelievable to think about that an additional 2 seconds per hour, she wouldn't have made it.
And that comes down to, you could have taken 2 seconds per book to rip the page out, and that would have been it.
Yes, for sure.
Laz's other race, well, he's got various other races, but the one that I know about was Big's Backyard. Have you ever been tempted to do Backyard Ultra?
Yeah, I certainly have. As to when or if I do that, I don't know. It has quite the qualification process at this point. I don't know that I'm currently ready to devote an entire year essentially to qualifying for and then doing that race. I also still have my own little kind of monkey on my back with Tour de Géant, which also happens in September. But it's a very intriguing race format that I'd like to try. It's also, though, it's getting to the point, it keeps getting longer, and I don't know that I can take an arbitrary amount of time from work and my family and just kind of say, hey, I'll be back sometime. Maybe
there are other
3
backyard
days,
ultras.
maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. Sometime.
You could come over and do the one in Scotland, the Highlander. You're more than welcome to come over and do that one.
Oh, thank you. It sounds like it's probably better scenery.
Yeah. Awkward question for you. Is there anybody that you would like to go for a run with? Either alive, dead, fictional? Who would it be?
You know, I really I'd love to see some of the kind of older greats in their prime and be able to go for, you know, look at some of the people that finished Barkley 20 years ago, guys like David Horton and Brian Robinson, and see them out there in their prime, doing what they do best. Go for a run with Joss Naylor. And you know, people like my dad as well, who, you know, he took me out in the woods and out on these adventures when I was a kid, and would certainly love to for him to be able to join on some of these longer excursions now. Hopefully, you know, I'll be able to stick with it long enough for my kids to join and do these things before I get too old to do them. So, you know, I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is just being able to kind of revisit past greats and past people.
You mentioned Tour de Jean earlier on. Is that Monkey on Your Back happening this year then?
That's the plan. Hoping to go over there a bit early and make a little summer family holiday out of it. Get a little training on the terrain and not have a overnight travel to deal with a few days before the race. So we'll see. You know, that one was similar to Spine this year, where last year I started out with like 18 hours of the best that I've ever felt running. Just felt absolutely amazing, and then suddenly could not stay awake. So hopefully I can resolve that issue and have a good showing there. There's so many variables that no matter what you do, it's never guaranteed. And I'm just, you know, would love to have the dice land in my favor on that one.
Are there any other big adventures that you've got planned? Certain races that might be happening very soon? Do you think?
Well, I mean, you know, it's pretty well a given that I'm returning to Barkley most years, with it kind of being my home course and really doubles as a visit to family now and as a short trip for me. So certainly look forward to being a part of that. And yeah, I think plenty of big adventures ahead, but you know, with as long as mine typically are, unfortunately, I can't just turn around and do one every month.
Well, we know you're on a tight schedule tonight, so I think that wraps it up for now. Hopefully you'll come back on, and we've delighted you with our Scottish banter. All I can say is thank you very much for coming on, John. Thank you, Nikki, for being Nikki, and it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
You.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed it.